This is Sarah Levitt with the Making Magnificence Project. And today, this conversation on healing is with Marcus Earle, Clinical Director at Psychological Counseling Services, otherwise known as PCS,
Yes.
in Phoenix, Arizona, and one of the developers of the PCS intensive program, which we're going to talk about. And they're not kidding when they're saying intensive. Marcus holds a PhD in marriage and family therapy, is a certified sex therapist, and specializes in couples work. Marcus, welcome to the Making Magnificence Project.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that.
I really appreciate you being here because we've been talking about this for a long time. And so
Yes, we have.
I'm um, both honored and super curious and just glad to be having this conversation with you.
I feel honored to be here, so thank you.
Thank you. Um, so I'd like to kind of dive right in to, I'd like to begin with the topic of trauma because it's
Yes.
so much a part of our lexicon right now. Like it's like in the water.
Right.
Everybody's kind of talking about it. And so my sense is, having done pretty intensive work at PCS, is that a good bit of what you guys are doing is kind of excavating trauma and then healing. Let me start there. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
hmm
So I want to just first start with what is trauma? Because again, it's just all over the place right now. And are there different kinds?
It really depends on your perspective on things. I mean,
Mm,
we can have our scientific explanation, we can have the precise way of doing it, but it really does come down to the individual. So if you talk to older generations, where something like a war would be traumatic if you were in the war. But even then, you might not want to talk about that because you're supposed to tough it out. So there's a mindset for older generations, just like, we kind of suck it up and we're
hmm
okay.
hmm
Now, we'll end up debating that, I think, as we go through this talk.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
where we're arriving now, and I think, kind of the pendulum swinging to the other side is that you know, in some ways, almost anything can feel traumatic to people. So we have this broad swing that's gone on. And, the only unfortunate part about that is then the impact of trauma gets diminished by people. So we have an emotional response, we have a physical response, we have a psychological response to an event or chronic events that are going on. That happens to everybody. So it's really not a question, is it there or not there? It's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's really comes down to, how aware you are about it. Was there permission to pay attention to it? Did you grow up in a family that said, you're good, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get going? Did you pull up a family that just didn't talk about feelings? There's just all these influencers that that really have us paying more attention or less attention to things. So the nice thing about social media, the nice thing about all the information out there is people are paying more attention to things that have impacted them. And, because the big things are pretty easy, the things that we've called big T's, like war, um, these somebody dies that you're close to. Those are things that even though the latter we don't talk about easily,
Right, right.
because
Absolutely.
death is a tough one.
Yeah.
They're pretty easy to say, yeah, that must have been traumatic for you. And we can identify and perhaps be empathetic with that. It's the smaller ones, things like divorce, things like maybe seeing a car accident, perhaps being in a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens a lot is there's a concept called disenfranchised grief, where people, there's not permission or support to talk about how this was difficult, that I experienced a loss. So was this divorce or death of a pet, you know, those are traumatic things, but societally, yeah, it just happens. And so we
Mm-hmm.
move on. And so it gets pushed aside. And I think that's what we learn as children is to push things aside, and that's the thing that we end up paying attention to. Okay, how did you push it aside? How
Mm-hmm.
did your creative little being, that you were, because we all are, come up
Right.
with a way of pushing through, making it through, getting through, just sometimes just flat out surviving.
Hmm.
What was your way of going about that? And children are
Hmm.
immensely creative, as we know. I
Hmm.
continue to be impressed listening to people's stories and go, wow, one, you made it through that.
Hmm.
Two, what a creative way of getting through that. You just that noticing how strong children are, so those that are very vulnerable are also incredibly resourceful and strong. And thank goodness, for
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely can be grateful for that. So I don't know if I've kept us on track.
No, no, no. Yeah.
Or what
So
you,
there, no, no, no. I mean, you're answering my question in that kind of older or past generations might have thought of trauma as kind of big, big T, war,
right?
something violent.
Yes.
And now it's more ubiquitous, kind of everybody, or more people are certainly talking about it. And regardless, we tend to, for survival, tell me if I'm tracking here, uh,
Yeah.
push it, if we don't process it, and we can talk about what that means, we tend to push it aside, particularly as kids, for
Yes.
survival.
Right. So if you're one of the fortunate few that have parents that actually ask how you're doing and then follow up with it, because
Yeah,
most children will say, "Yeah, I'm
fine.
doing okay,"
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
this, a brief description. The fortunate children are the ones, and this is really a small group of people, I believe, where
Yeah.
their parents press in, and they say, "Well, okay, well, fine's one answer. You know what else might have happened today? You know, what
Mm-hmm.
went well? So let's look at, what went great during your day, and what were some challenges during the day? Just create a conversational environment so that children can process what happened, because, you know, in a school environment, you have so many things that are going on. You're in a mode where you're there to perform,
Yeah.
to
Right.
I need to produce good results. And that's tough for a lot of kids to do. And so then they're feeling, in comparison to their peers, not quite doing so well. Maybe they got called out by a teacher, so they feel embarrassed, Then that turns into shame, like I must
Mm-hmm.
not be as good as others. There's something wrong with me. Can be bullying that
Hmm.
goes on. It can be as simple as a friend saying, I remember when I was in middle school, we're just walking across the open grass area, and I'm just walking normally, and a friend goes, "You sure swing your arms a lot." Boom, right there, my insecurity kicked in,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I'm paying attention to how much I swing my arms.
Yes.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
basically for the rest of my life. Uh,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
there.
Yes.
So it imprinted on me. So that was actually traumatic for me, not because it's a really big deal. It's not, but my insecurities and my self-doubts, my need to look good, to fit in, all those things came together in that moment. Oh no, I was noticed for being different and maybe
Mm,
awkward, you
mm,
know,
mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm,
looking a little silly or dumb or,
mm-hmm,
nerdy, whatever the
mm-hmm.
frame may be. But and so those things get imprinted. I
Yeah.
remember being pretty stocky, when I was young, getting teased by kids, and the fatty, fatty 2x4. And so I'm trying to chase them. Of course, I can't catch them, you know?
Right. Right.
So it's just humiliating,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
these are just the simple little things that go on for most children in some form or another that has nothing to do with your family. This is
That's
just what's
right. But
going on.
we're not even talking about family yet. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So children are impacted by so many things. And now we have news where people generally have the TV on. I
Yeah.
believe that, a number of parents are careful about that, and a number of parents would be careless, in keeping the news on. And just think, if you're listening to the news right now and all this back and forth going on, all these accusations,
Yeah.
talking about, people being murdered and killed, and it's a lot for children to take in.
Yeah.
And so I think we're
Yeah.
going to have ongoingly a generation that's overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
They've been traumatized by too much information because, again, parents, the really great parents, I think, unfortunately, the minority are the ones that would come alongside and say, what happened in your day? And say, well, so and so said something. Okay. And then they press in. Well, what'd
Mm-hmm.
they say? It's not like, what did they say?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what'd they say? and
And
so you
Marcus,
stay
let
with
me
it.
stop you for just a second. And so what
Yeah,
is it in that I think where you're going is in that moment, in that pressing in as you're describing, it sounds like it blunts the impact of the imprint.
right.
What is happening there?
Yeah, it's so interesting because, this is an emotional wound, a psychological wound, that happens. And what we do know is our brain logs it,
Hmm.
and it gets in there. If we have the ability and or the context, the environment to process, to share, to express our feelings around it, and to do that as many times as we need to do it. We're kind of a
Hmm.
one and done society. Okay, I've talked
Right.
about it. I'm good.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I need to keep talking about it
Yeah.
until I'm good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so the in that environment, if a child has that sense that somebody is going to see them, is
Hmm.
going to hear them,
Hmm.
is going to value their experience, then they know there's not something wrong with them. The message is you're okay. Your experience, the way you experience it, is normal. It's okay. And I hear you, and I can actually even relate. Sometimes I might tell a story in response, but sometimes I might just hold space for the emotion that's going on. You have to be careful in judging that as a parent.
Hmm.
Um, Nevertheless, when a child feels held,
Hmm. Hmm.
we heal.
Hmm.
Because that's part of our work here that I think we'll get into is
Yes.
that
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
held,
Yeah.
and it's safe.
Yeah.
And these people actually see me, hear me, value me. We all need that. And if you get that as a child, you can weather lots of things and they don't stay stuck. They become an experience that informs you about life, that
Yeah.
informs you a little bit
Yeah.
more about yourself,
Yeah.
and you can walk a little bit more strongly because, oh, okay, so that's what's that about.
And
That's
maybe
what.
even gives you greater empathy at some point later on,
Yes,
rather,
that's
right?
really
Rather
good.
than
Yeah,
um
I like that.
and I before we kind of I have, I have tons of questions for you. So you contrasted at the top of this conversation, you contrasted kind of an event, um, violent event, war, or something like that is one kind of trauma. And then you also mentioned chronic trauma. I'm guessing, so chronic trauma might be bullying, as you've talked about. I'm also guessing, again, always push back if I don't ha if I'm wrong, that a good bit of chronic trauma happens in families.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you kind of give us a picture of that?
Yeah, the ones that everybody would say, "Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
you grew up in that." So that would be the physical abuse, where people are hit, slapped, they may be locked in a room, I mean, the stories are endless,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so TV shows are starting to show these things, and they're as bad as they are,
Hmm.
and a lot of that stuff's not made up.
Yeah.
So the stories that I've heard, it's just
Yeah.
heart-wrenchingly painful.
Yeah.
There is sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Again, we like to think about these things as, infrequent, they barely happen. It's just a stranger, so we have that whole stranger danger concept. Not true.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
I'm not saying strangers are always safe. I'm just
Right.
saying
Right.
really
Right.
they're
Yeah.
not the biggest concern.
Yeah.
The biggest concern are the people
Yeah.
because they're the ones, whether it's a neighbor, a family member, they're the ones that have an inside track to a child. And with that inside track, they can begin to groom. And the concept of grooming is beginning to develop a relationship, to create a sense of safety, security, the feeling heard, feeling seen, feeling
Mm,
valued.
mm,
Those
hmm.
same things that can be healing
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
then get taken advantage of
Hmm.
in those situations. So those two areas are the big areas. The thing that I think we're paying a lot more attention to right now is the neglect. And that's a tough one for people. That would have been my experience growing up is that I had dad who, I worked with him for 35 years. And I think part of that was chasing approval,
Hmm. Hmm.
just wanting because he was busy all the time. Then my mom was busy trying to take care of the rest of the story, you know, so I had two busy parents. and they're good people. Know they love me, and so they're not bad people. Didn't do any overt harm to me. Um, but it's that need to be seen,
Hmm.
need to be heard, need to be valued. That didn't happen,
Hmm.
in a way that I needed. I'm not saying it didn't happen at all.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
certainly happened in moments. But I was a pretty engaged little boy who really needed lots of attention. It's proven to be an asset in what I do. But
Yeah,
as a
no, I'm
child,
just, yeah.
it
I
was a
was
it
just
was a huge
thinking that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
it was a huge vulnerability as a child.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
that had a profound impact on me,
yeah.
and so I survived by trying to look good, which I never thought I did,
Mm.
sound good,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
perform well enough. And, so I was into sports. I was, thankfully smart enough to get by in school, and, that looked good enough. And, so it's just interesting to pay attention to that which I wouldn't have really noticed or paid attention to. So
Hmm.
what opened the door for me, and this is what I think I find for so many people, is you know, I I was already in my doctorate program, actually pretty much finishing up. So I was 27, and probably too young to be finishing a doctorate. Uh, in terms of I'm gonna go out and meet with people.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and there was a training that Marilyn Murray had, and she's the creator of the Murray method. Very helpful process. She's got her own trauma model. So she was training us in this model, which has conceptually, that at birth we're this original child, and then difficult experiences happen, and a split takes place, and then there's a wounded child, and then there's a controlling child. And there's some other aspects to it, but that's the core elements to it. And just this common sense thing, yeah, that makes sense. Well, see, as you do drawings, and draw you a hurting child, and I don't draw, I do draw, but I wouldn't call it artistic eloquence. Um, it's stick figures. So I did my stick figures, and I got up in front of my peers, my future peers, because my dad and the guys I was going to be, people I was going to be working with, and shared it. And it was probably 2 minutes. I was just crying, just sobbing.
Mm.
And so what just came flooding is that loneliness.
Hmm.
Very awkward moment, because here I'm with my dad,
Mm.
these people I'm
Mm.
be working with. But boy, was it the beginning of a journey of healing. And it's so easy to minimize it because
Hmm.
we had the family that looked good, sounded good, and in a lot of ways good. The miss was for me. You know, there'd be lots of children that would just love to have my experience growing
Mm.
up,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and I would go, yeah, I think you would. And then they could say, well, that didn't seem like that big a deal. And I could say, I understand that relative to your experience, really not a big deal.
Right, right.
I didn't have that menu to know that there are all these things going on. I just knew what was
Yeah,
not happening for me.
yeah,
And that's what I encourage people the most is your experience is your experience. It's not in comparison to others' experience. And so all you know is what you know, and it impacts you in the way it impacts you. And so that for me is that opened a door that I'm so happy opened, because I probably would have been the more judgy. Well, that doesn't seem like that's a big deal, because I'd have been shut down myself to that,
Mm.
protecting myself.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
controlling child would have been guarded.
Hmm.
The protector, as Dick Schwartz talks about in internal family systems, and I would have been politely engaged with people,
Right, but yeah,
but yeah, it wouldn't have come from inside of me.
yeah,
And that's what you were talking about earlier in terms of in developing an empathy. And
yeah.
in that moment, I developed greater empathy for people that have been neglected.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, so for most of us, what I'm hearing is we experience a trauma, and the people around us, oftentimes our parents, are not able, and they might be the inflicting the trauma. They're not
right,
able, so that there's that imprint, and then it's not processed. We're not witnessed, we're not seen, we're not talking about our emotion. We may not be able to if it's happening inside the family, right?
right.
And so what then happens, Marcus? So there's the imprint for most of us. what then happens and how does it show up personally and professionally? Or does it?
Well, it does.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, you don't have
every
to. Yeah.
every time
Yeah,
uh,
it does.
we
It so does.
we we do pretend it doesn't a lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And let me just touch on one other piece before we go forward with that, because I think this is really important. And I emphasize that I had loving parents because I did, and there was a lot of good things because that's the tug of war for a lot of people. If it's not this overt, parents doing something horrific, or pretty darn bad. Um, well, I love my parents. They
Hmm.
love me. And
Hmm.
what I hear so often is they did the best they can.
Hmm.
I go, well, not really. Um, they did what they did, but I think all parents have a nagging sense I could do something better. So
Mm.
that's not our best. I didn't do my best with my two children, which is just awful. Um, do not like saying that, and it's true. And we've been making repair because I ended up repeating what I grew up with because that was my natural bent. Um, so that is difficult for a lot of people to reconcile to say, well, you want me to blame my parents? Well, no, not what I'm saying. I just want you to be honest. That's all.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
just want you to be honest with the whole story.
Yeah, that's
That
my
I
experience of you. Yes.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Is I love them and they drop the ball.
Hmm.
I can even love them and they sexually abuse me.
Hmm.
There's all these things that can be held, and this is thing, as a form of therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is so helpful because it teaches you to hold both
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's really hard for us. We're
Hmm.
these creatures that want to just have one or the other be true. And when you learn to hold multiple truths, you know,
Yes.
that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And
so,
challenging too, right? Like it's
oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I
So
mean, just the political environment right now would be, this example, you just want to go this way, or
yeah,
you want to go that way.
right.
And
Yeah.
each side thinking, sad we're saying sides,
Right,
we ought
absolutely.
to be
Yeah.
saying, each perspective believing they're right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in that rightness, each side, each perspective doing harm.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
like what
Mhm.
would it be like? There's a beautiful thing. I had a client recently who wrote a letter to parent, and they wrote to their parent's inner child. I go, that's brilliant.
Oh, wow.
That
Yeah.
was that was a really sweet, powerful thing to listen to.
Very
So then I
sweet.
thought, what if Congress, functioned from their inner children?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because they kind of do without knowing it. Um,
Yep. Yes.
but but if we could have that vulnerability, and I think that's the magical piece. We'll get to that some more. Um, so back to your question about, like what happens.
Hmm.
So, what happens is that we all figure it out. We figure out how to make it. So we can figure it out by learning how to hide. We can figure out, to I feel less than, and so, I withdraw, I pull away, those types of things. We can feel those negative feelings, those difficult feelings, and we can go the other side. Well, I'm going to show everybody that I'm capable. That's what parents want to see anyway. I want to see how I'm bringing it. And so we can get performance based. We can keep seeking for the accolades. Or we can escape in other ways. It doesn't take long to figure out there are ways to escape. So we can escape through drugs, we can escape through alcohol, we can escape through spending, we can escape through sex, we can escape through so many
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
It's again, people creative. So
Hmm. Hmm.
we're not short on ways of coming up with ways of coping and not sorting out what's going on. Because if I can stay busy avoiding you, engaging you, or avoiding myself through substance use or process addiction, and with food, with withholding or overdoing. Um, so we have this whole menu that we don't know as children. We just kind of land on it.
Hmm.
Oh, you know. So I
Hmm.
found my dad's Playboy. Boom, right then.
Hmm.
Easy,
Hmm.
easy way to escape. You
Hmm.
know, and so it's just very easy to come up with a coping thing that as a kid is your savior.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
it's your way to make it through. So
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing, although it can have some difficult outcomes for you.
Yeah. Right.
It's actually the part that saved you and helped you to get through all that. And that's one of the really important things we want people to pay attention to. And that's why Dick Schwartz, I like it as no bad parts. Thank goodness you helped me to get through it. Now, because this is the rest of the answer, because the ways we cope are all barriers to intimacy. They really do
Mm-hmm.
create difficulty for us in developing intimate relationships with the people we want to be intimate with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not talking about sexual intimacy.
Hmm.
Sexual
Yeah.
intimacy. It's about emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
This deeply knowing of one another. Um, and so, if we're protecting ourselves, if we're escaping, if we're hiding, we're not available. We can look good, sound good,
Hmm.
so the more difficult ones we get through are the performers, the accomplished ones,
Right. Yeah.
you
No, I
know.
want to talk to you about
'Cause-
that. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm really
Um,
curious if you have seen or the literature shows that there's a correlation or even a loose connection between trauma and achievement.
for sure.
Yeah, I thought that's what
I
you
don't,
would say.
you know, I don't even need research on that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it it just creates a driving force. So the
Right.
driving force can be, I need to avoid at all costs being known. The driving force can be, I just can't deal with this. I need to escape in this plume of smoke, or, looking at porn or whatever, it just,
Right.
or, you know, I'm just not gonna let you touch me,
Hmm.
because I'm good at what I do. I have wealth. I'm doing things, just right.
Yeah.
Perfectionism is the big issue on that side of the continuum. And so who's going to bother? I mean, you're bringing the money in, people are looking at you going, "Wow, you're killing it." You know, I think we should be saying, "Oh no, look at how busy
Interesting.
you are." You know,
Right.
and
Right.
and but we don't do that. We
Yeah.
sing praises to that. And and that's unfortunate that we don't see the overdoing,
Hmm.
that's going on for people, and that's actually coming from an insecure place. That's what's behind narcissism. That's what behind is underneath great accomplishments. You won't find a really successful person who isn't equally insecure. Just
Can you
not you're not
say
going to
more
find
about
it.
that?
Yeah, it's the driving force. I don't feel okay about myself. So there's shame, there's insecurity. So it's just this driving, and I'm going to get
Mm-hmm.
better. I'm going to have more. I'm going to make more,
Hmm.
and so there's never enough,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And so those people are always insecure. Now if they've done their work and they still have the money, then I wouldn't say that. They're still there, but they're going to be aware of that, and they'll generally talk about that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but the ones that, kind of want you to notice
Hmm.
how well they're doing or what they own, a lot of insecurity.
I'm wondering
You know,
too, Marcus, if it might show up in not just accumulation, but also so not enough things, money, whatever, but also not
right.
enough praise. Like
Yes.
that I'm guessing here is part of the insatiability that's attached to the trauma and the achievement.
Yeah. So now we back up and we talk a little bit more about shame.
Hmm.
Shame is this inherent belief that there's something wrong with me, that I come up short, and it's pretty easy to see how that can develop in childhood. That really isn't complicated. Um, it is difficult to acknowledge because it is such a vulnerable space for any one person. If you know that about me, then you can really hurt me,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
that's the nice thing
Yeah.
about emotionally focused therapy for couples. They're helping people identify, here's this really vulnerable place. I'm scared you're going to hurt me, but I'm going to put this out.
Mm.
And then we can
Beautiful.
start to have that connection around these vulnerable pieces of us, you know, which is actually kind of why we got married, but we didn't know that. Uh,
You know, we're gonna get there. That's
all right. So, yeah, we'll come back to that. So, so that the vulnerability that we all have is in everybody in some form or another and some degree, so that's again another given. Something that I minimize a lot for myself. Shame wasn't something I was embracing of, even though I tapped into feeling less and, the emotionals, the loneliness. I just wasn't ready to deal with the
Yeah,
concept of shame.
yeah, I want to talk to you about readiness too, because in my own experience of coming to PCS and doing the intensive, and as I said, like you guys aren't messing around with
Yeah.
the intense part of the intensive. Um, when it was first suggested to me that I do the trauma intensive, it was 3 years before I felt
Mm,
ready. And in some ways, readiness, there were external circumstances on multiple fronts that kind of, I was like, okay, like I, I'm not dealing with some of these things well. I'm
right.
caught in in a lot of emotional turmoil, and well, I'm just going to go do this. But I want to talk to you about readiness. Well, actually, all right. Well, hang on. My brain's in 10 different directions.
Sorry.
Um, Let me back up actually to I've heard you say, and we were just alluding to it now, that we choose people to help us. I'm thinking about primarily romantic relationships. We choose
Right.
people to help us grow, that underneath we understand each other's pain. I'm thinking of Terry Real talking about the mysticism of marriage. How you choose someone who's going to, as he says, stick the burning spear in your eyeball. Um, would
Yep.
you kind of explain this to us, Marcus? In other words, why is it that we are so often drawn that the person or persons we're drawn to are the people that are going to stir our stuff, particularly in romantic relationships? What the hell
Yeah.
is going on there?
So this is the interesting thing about us as human beings is we want to be comfortable. We really do. Um, and life
Mm,
isn't comfortable. Um, the way it plays out, though, and what we're talking about right now is that what I grew up with, even though I may not have liked it, even though I may swear I'm never going to be like my dad, or I'm never going to be like my mom, or I'm never going to be in a marriage like that. It's what we know.
right.
It's 18 years being
Yeah.
infused into
Yeah.
who we are.
Yeah.
It's what we're comfortable with. That gets minimized by most. And so, it's and sometimes, when people realize, wow, I just recreated my parents' marriage, or I just turned out like my dad, there's all this shame that comes in and I swore I'd never do that. And then they feel like they betrayed themselves,
Totally.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
and and the truth is, well, no, you didn't. You know,
Mm,
really all that happened is what happens to all of us. We just went to what's comfortable. The opportunity for that is what's so important to pay attention to. So what's comfortable is we generally, and I would say like 99.9% of the time, we choose the right person relationally. You know, the where it goes wrong is when people don't recognize and acknowledge, I chose you because I really need to grow up more and I need to do it differently. My
mm,
ways of protecting are not going to create intimacy.
mhm,
So what I learned doesn't work. Some things work.
mhm,
I
mhm.
need I need to learn the different way of engaging with you, which comes through vulnerability, and communicating the things that we
Damn
don't
it.
want to talk about. I know. It's like we all want to avoid it,
Damn that vulnerability. I know. It's the only
but
way. Damn it.
there just really is no other way,
There's no
because
other way.
and,
Yeah.
and it's something we all long for. Even the most
Thousand
hardened
percent.
hardened person wants that
Thousand
sense of
percent.
being known.
Yes.
Really scary stuff.
Yes.
And so that's what we have the opportunity for in marriages. And the marriages that don't work is when one or both people come up short, you know, or they're just so worn out by what happened. I mean, there's lots of reasons. Um, there's just too much water under the bridge. So and that's always sad to me. It's like, oh man, would love to have met you 10 years ago.
Hmm.
So we could have dug in. And I think that's, the mistake we all make is we just wait. We hope it's going to get
Right.
better.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we can change something,
Yeah. Right.
and I'm not saying therapy is the answer for everybody. I think it's a pretty good answer. It also is important to be with a good therapist, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
another discussion.
That's a whole,
Uh,
right. Thousand. Yes. 1,000%. So so we're drawn to what's comfortable.
right.
And in that, you're saying we're not making the wrong choice. We're choosing the right person to grow us up from what we adapted to as kids.
Yeah. So, the really hard thing is sitting across from a partner where their husband or wife had affairs.
Hmm. Hmm.
What do you mean that's good for me?
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
think their behavior is good for you. Like I think what they did, that's not good for you. That's hurtful, that's traumatic, it's a
Yeah.
betrayal. All
Yeah.
those things are true. It's just, what's it bringing up in you?
Yeah.
Let's look at that because there's your history. There's, what you haven't sorted through. Um,
Hmm.
that would have a number of things going on. One is you probably accepting less than you should have accepted in the
Hmm.
relationship,
Hmm.
because those things don't happen. You're not surprised by that, if you're really connected to somebody.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so that's
Very
not,
true.
they didn't cause it. That's not at all what I'm saying, even close to what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, okay, so this is calling out
Yeah.
something's wrong.
Yeah.
So evidently it takes this level of something
Uh-huh.
wrong to get your attention,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I don't like saying that. I
Yeah.
haven't liked receiving that in my own life. It's like, oh, really? You waited until now. Um, and so I'm just really grateful life hasn't gotten worse than it's been because I've
Yeah.
dodged a lot of
I'm with you.
bullets along the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the hard conversations, the difficult conversations. The really important conversations are the ones where, okay, so what's this saying to me?
Yeah.
What's my learning
Yeah.
given this going on right now? So I
Yeah. That's
intentionally chose
beautiful.
something.
Can you say that again? That's beautiful. What's my learning given what's going on right now?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
You know,
beautiful.
so,
Yeah.
so that's the calling. We like to push
Yeah.
it away. We like to be angry. We like to
Yeah,
just
that's
be
right.
wounded by it, but oh, let me get curious about this
Yeah.
because I chose to get in this marriage. Some people like to say, well, I
Right.
knew it wasn't the right marriage to begin with. I say, well, okay, you still chose to go
You
along
still
with it. So
chose
let's
it.
talk about
Right. Right. Yeah.
it.
So
So
what
let's,
was that?
yeah, so let's
Okay.
just keep the conversation. And I think people are kind of nervous about pressing, into that. So whether a therapist or a
Yeah, no, I want to
friend,
talk. I want to
you
talk to
know,
you about this. Yeah.
but
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so the okay, so I'm actually going to kind of ask a double question here. So let's talk about pressing into it because we've worked together. Um, and at one point, I think I said, Marcus, that's bullshit.
Could have.
I know I did. I'm like, that's bullshit. Um, when I was dealing with tangling in a romantic relationship. So you say or have said that I'm reading here, a key aspect of therapy is finding, and you're extraordinary at this, is finding a balance between affirming the client, the person,
Yeah,
affirming you and challenging you to stretch into emotions and thoughts which you have likely spent a lifetime avoiding. And I'm guessing, so that's what the therapist in an ideal world is doing, kind of the pressing while holding someone.
yeah,
What about that creates the alchemy? What does healing look like?
yeah. You see, I love that because um, we, in our field, we want to make it about our techniques, our methodology.
Mm-hmm.
Research has never shown those are the core things. It's the person of the therapist that's
Yeah.
the most influencing.
Yeah.
And that's why when people choose a therapist, choose one that's relatable, you
Yeah.
know. So choose one that your gut says, "Oh, this seems like a good person." That's the better choice. Even if they're not as skilled, you're probably still going to get further down the road
Interesting.
with that person. You know, at the core of me is the belief that we can always get to a better place. That's been reinforced again and again and so many agains. And seeing what I've seen, for me personally, what I've seen professionally, work with people that have been in a cult abuse situation, which, most people don't want to deal with it. That's really happening. It is. Um, can you imagine having this whole system just twisting you and
Yeah.
using you?
Yeah.
How do you ever get out of that?
Yeah.
What I know is inside they still haven't lost their essence. They still haven't lost this hope. You know, so even if they're suicidal, I know that people feel hopeless. It's still in there. There's still some hope. And so I know that. I just know it's there, or they wouldn't even come.
Yeah,
So
I want to
at
talk to you about what that is when someone comes
at
in.
a
So you're
at a
looking
baseline,
or tacking toward that essence.
yes.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah, you're
rather
very
sit
good
with
at it.
I would rather sit with somebody that holds that belief than anything else. You know, why would I want to sit and entrust somebody that thinks, well, depression, you just got to think differently, or, you know, just
Mm-hmm.
I want to sit with somebody who says, well, that's part of it, but you just have you're probably angry and you have a really heavy weight on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to know what all that weight's about, um, because you've made it through this far, so you got a bit of a fighter in you, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just looking, for what is that about that individual, that theme or that vein that shows you that they want to live, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they want to be better, they know they can. It's always there, always, always, always there.
And so what
Um,
does the you've referenced a couple times if someone's doing their work or has done, although as we've talked about, it's never really done. But
right.
what does that look like, Marcus? So um, part of it, it sounds like, is taking the lid off the can to what someone might be have shunted aside a long
Yeah.
time ago or continually. But what's that alchemy? What's happening there that's
Yeah.
transformational?
So I'm going to give a simple answer and then we can go from there, because I think the simple answer is to return to what I've said earlier. It's being seen,
Yes,
it's
that
being
sounds good.
heard, it's
Yes.
being valued.
Yeah.
That the the healing nature of human connection
Hmm.
should not be minimized. It's
Hmm.
it's it's profound.
Yes.
So whatever that magic is that happens
Yeah.
when people can get underneath all the defenses, all the protection, and really let others see,
Hmm.
who they are, this mixture of shame, of creativity, of energy, of joy, this whole mixture is in all of us. You can let people see that, and then you're across from somebody that's willing to let you see that in them. That's healing every time.
Hmm.
Every
Hmm.
time it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's the courageous journey,
Hmm.
that I'm trying to help people embrace,
Hmm. Hmm.
is that.
Rather than resist.
Yeah, so I could talk about techniques,
Hmm.
you know, but I'm not so good at techniques. That just doesn't fit my personality. Why? That's not really my
I don't know, man.
personality.
I've been on the receiving end.
What I what
But
I'd
I
like,
hear you. I hear you. The
yeah,
container and the capacity to the capacity to see and witness someone. And so,
Yeah.
but I want to press you just a little bit. You
Please.
do more than just, and I think this is where some therapy may fall short. Um, they're just doing the holding and the witnessing, and you're
Right.
doing that while you are holding someone to their highest essence in a way. That's my
Yeah.
experience of you. So
Well,
it's
yeah, because I'm also saying, why are you such a jerk?
right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So that for me, this work is a lot of fun. Um, there are
Yeah. You can
certainly
tell.
times where I get a little bit too much on the fun side, and then I'm not so respectful. So I've had to apologize a number of times. Um, but what's in that for me is, the work is serious and it's not,
Yeah.
in the sense
I
that,
totally know.
we're kind of funny,
We are very
you know.
funny. I'm just thinking quickly about when we're going to talk about the intensive in just a minute, but I remember when we were kind of doing affirmations for other people in the group cohort, and the first thing
Mhm.
that went through my brain was I counted to make sure I had enough affirmations for I mean, just yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
right, or it's actually was I was supposed to be affirming myself. That's what it was. And
You were.
before I did that, I counted to make sure I had one for everybody in the room. And you and I had a good giggle about that.
Yeah.
But no, we are very funny. I mean, if there's a little bit of space, we're kind of very funny, even
Yeah. So the
in the tragedy.
so the mixture, the alchemy, as you're talking about it,
Hmm.
um, is the belief about people, allowing for things to be humorous because the ability to kind of laugh at ourselves and laugh at the experience frees us up a bit more. The the intent to not let up, because that's what I think annoys people the most about me, is he doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to,
And you're precise
and
too. Like
uh,
you've done it a long time, Marcus, and you're precise like that. It's interesting to me that you shared here that as a kid you were very engaged and kind of paying attention because as an adult that's what
yeah,
you're doing. I mean, you're paying precise attention and you can cut through quickly to kind of
thank you.
well,
Yeah,
yeah. No, it's true. You can get to kind of the essence quickly but without really overwhelming somebody. It's almost this kind of,
because that's the holding too, so we're putting pieces of the puzzle together. It's this exploration, it's this learning, it's discovering, and just things are falling together. I go, okay, okay, well, would this be sensible, you
hmm.
know, to think
Yes.
about it this way?
Yeah, I've
You know,
heard you say that. Yeah.
and then it allows, for me to be there with an understanding, and as we've already talked about, the understanding creates or supports a connection. And then I say, let's go, the terminology in EMDR, let's go with this. Um, so, so let me,
Right. Yeah.
we'll go with that. So
Yeah.
then let's go and let's go find,
Mm.
the vulnerable parts of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's always there,
Yeah.
and really, my goal isn't that I would go to take care of. My goal is to go to support the person with me in that moment, support them to go there for themselves and
Yep.
find out, gosh, I can take care of myself.
Yep.
That's like the most profound discovery for people,
Yeah.
is that I can go back and I can nurture myself
Yeah.
in the ways that I wasn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing more healing than that.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to
Yeah.
get a little teary. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. No, but yes, there is. I'm teary and I'm choking.
Yeah.
There is nothing more healing than that, in my experience, than in coming into relationship
Yeah.
with that very young essence the original child, as Marilyn would,
Yeah.
and then having also regard and respect. I know I was carrying so much shame for a number of reasons. And I want to
Mm,
get to the intensive because I went because there was shit that I just couldn't shift, and I'd been working on it a long time in
yeah.
therapy. Like, and I couldn't, and then did the intensive, and it was literally like it was plates. It was like tectonic shifting. But that relationship with kind of that vulnerable young
Yeah.
part, right? And then respect and regard, which I'm still kind of learning and working on for the other parts that come in um, to take care.
Yes. So important. Yep. Because that's our whole being.
Yeah.
And it's valuing the whole system. So that's true, in doing a family therapy meeting, you have
Mm,
to value everybody in the room, even if some are a little bit more problematic in a moment.
right.
Still have to value them,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
certainly true for what goes on inside of us, because we do
Hmm.
have all these different parts, aspects, however you want to frame it, and to value the way you've made it through,
Yeah.
even if the way you've made it through has led to difficulty,
Yes.
it
Yes.
still is the way you've made it through. And
Yes.
I'd love for us to have a sense of pride of, look at me,
Yeah.
look
Right.
at all the different ways I went through this.
Yeah.
You know, kind of wish I'd have made some different choices, but look at this is impressive. I'm here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then coming into relationship with those, protectors and Dick Schwartz's, but coming into relationship with those parts as well. And for me, it's been a journey of kind of respect and regard rather than
Mm,
shame.
yes.
Um, yeah,
But
yeah.
I that's another topic that comes up because the shame's going to come up,
Mhm.
and so that's just the effect of trauma, is that something happened, nobody's there. What did I do or didn't do? And there must be something wrong with me that I did or did not do. And so that shame's always there. It actually never goes away. Now, we'd like to think I could just heal my shame. The truth is that you've learned to work with your shame,
Mhm.
you know. So
Mhm.
it's not a problem that I have shame. That's not the problem. How we deal with our shame
Mhm.
either creates problems, or it's just something that informs us in a moment about ourselves. Oh, there you are. You're feeling like a lousy little whatever. Um, okay, well, let's just take a moment. So
Yeah,
it's more about making friends with your shame, coming alongside your shame,
yeah.
than it is to I need to resolve and get rid of,
Yeah.
you
One of the
know.
most impactful, because I've been to PCS a couple times, once for the intensive, then for some shorter stints. But one of the things you said to me was, um, which has been so impactful, Marcus, and it just came back to me in something that I'm kind of challenged by in a relationship. You said I was like, I'm trying to hang on to kind of the part of me, the warrior part of me that's gonna like step forward and protect
Right.
that, you know, if there's a kid, we talked about, if there's a kid or a dog in trouble, I just go into Wonder Woman. I'm calm. I'm like, this is how it's going to go down. But if it's me, she comes out and she means business.
Yeah.
And and I was spending a lot of energy kind of squishing her down, like, shh, be quiet. I've got that,
Mm, hmm.
hanging on to her is what I said to you. And you said, instead of trying to hang on to her, why don't you ask her what she needs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking transformed everything.
Mm.
Because she'll tell me and then I'll be like, okay, got it. Like, got it.
Nice.
I'm paying attention now. Keep speaking up rather than be quiet, be quiet. I'm ashamed of you. Be quiet, be quiet. Let me
All
make you
right.
smaller, right?
That's awesome, Sarah.
No, yeah, it's anyway. So let's talk. We don't, do you have a little bit more time, like 10 minutes?
Yeah, I have no idea what time it is. So
Okay,
yes.
we're rolling up on the hour. I want to be respectful. We're rolling up in the hour mark here, but I want to make sure. we talk about the intensive, which you were instrumental in kind of designing. You've mentioned EMDR, that's one of the modalities you use. PCS, the intensive brings people from all over the country, potentially
Yeah.
the world, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
Peter Attia has written about this and spoken about it, and about his time at PCS. So, what is it? Um, who is it best suited for, and how does someone know they're ready for it?
Right. Well, everybody's suited for it.
Yes,
Um,
that's what I would say
the,
too. Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the
If you want to get lighter, go. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, if there's a serious mental illness, so where somebody actively psychotic, or if there's really an acute issue, actively suicidal, and they're not safe, out of control with an addiction, just can't contain themselves, we're just not a good fit for those things.
Hmm.
That those type of things where residential does make sense, and because you need the 24/7, and the opportunity to see yourself in a safe environment, to have people, processing with you. You just need that time when it's that for you. Um, and that's what we can't do. The rest we can do. And so what generally people come to us is when they've waited too long. So that's the common referral. It's also when people are in their therapy and they're feeling a bit stuck.
Hmm.
We've been doing the work for some time, and we just can't seem to cross the line, or I can't seem to cross the line that I want to cross. In those instances, it's a good referral. Um, and we will take people, who do think about harming themselves. We do take people where, not a long-term sobriety, but they just keep kind of bouncing because, you know, they've generally tried, the
Hmm.
residential. And I'm not big on repeating the same thing.
Yep.
Now, you said you come a couple of times. Um, I'm okay with that if there's an additive nature to it,
Hmm.
and I know that our system evolves and changes and goes. I just think that the more programmatic programs, it's more of the same, you know,
Hmm.
helpful,
Hmm.
but to continue to repeat residential, I'm not big on that,
Hmm. Hmm.
unless it's absolutely necessary for safety reasons.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so anything short of that, then I'd love to see them.
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah.
for me
And do you guys
is
have couples as well? So could a couple come to you to do the
we
intensive
do.
together? I thought you did. Yeah.
Yeah, and when people have the resources and time, that's the other part. Um,
Hmm.
we've had families, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's just it's amazing.
I
You
bet.
know, I think with couples, my preference is that that they would come individually first, and then come as a couple because I guess there could be times where they've done some really great work and they just need to sit with everything together, and that would be great as a
Hmm.
couple to start there. But there's still more sitting with self that needs to happen than the individual intensity before. It creates a common language,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then the couples tend to run with it. Um, so that's the ideal. Again, it's time, money. So I don't forget to say this. I'm not going to change the time factor. Um, Although it is nicer to have 8 days than it is 30 or 45.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
the On the financial side, we have a nonprofit entity called New Hope Educational Foundation, and so that will supplement people coming because it is expensive. And what I've not liked, is is it not accessible to everybody. That
Hmm.
doesn't make any sense to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
What we do is, I think, amazing, and I'd like for anybody to have access to that. And so that's an ongoing goal, is to have that more fully funded. But it's doing well enough to where say yes, we can say yes, and that's
Nice.
important to me, really
Yeah.
important to me.
Nice.
And I do want people to know that. Um,
And if I
So,
remember, Marcus, so there's the intensive, which is the 8 days, and then I came back and kind of did like a little mini
yeah,
intensive of like a day and a half and a day and a half. But the intensive itself, I described it to somebody as wait, because it's early mornings and some, I mean, it's an all day kind of thing. Like we're,
right.
I mean, I'm not I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you designed the damn thing. It's an all day kind of thing. And I remember it was so interesting. I remember having the feeling and talking to some of the people in my cohort about it of just kind of exhaustion. But I would get up in the morning and my soul was singing. My
Hmm,
soul was like, let's
that's
go.
nice. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So there was all this work
Yep.
that was being done, but my soul was like, yeah, that's the direction, girl. Let's go there.
Yeah, and that's that's another important thing is exhaustion in one way works in our favor, because
Mhm.
defenses go down. Sometimes they go up, but most of the time go down.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is this learning what you just said. I can be exhausted and I can still keep going. And I can be exhausted. I'm still looking forward to going,
Yeah.
and I can be
Yeah.
exhausted. I can still talk about myself. I can have cried for 3 days straight and I can still
Hmm.
cry on a fourth day.
Hmm.
You know, those types of experiences are pretty rare, for us to have. And the intensive offers an incredibly supportive environment for individuals to come into, where from 7 a.m. and then Monday through Thursday till 7:30 at night, you have like 2 half-hour breaks basically. You don't,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
not,
I've
there's not
told
much time
people
off.
about this. I'm like, they're not fucking around. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And even during lunch, there are like, lunch and learns basically, where we're hearing about
Yeah.
boundaries or whatever. Yeah.
And then, Fridays 7 to 5. The accusation that's an accurate one is, well, you're trying to help us to do better self-care, but you're not having us do much self-care when you're with us. And I go, well, that's true and not.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's all intentional because there's an additive nature to it. I think our staff does a wonderful job of communicating with one another. We work really hard to communicate to a referring therapist. And, as it makes sense, with most of the time we want, like a close person to the client calling in for a collateral call, just so we're not blind to some things that, the client may be blind to.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to be as comprehensive as we can and inclusive. Um, and so you know, 34, 35 hours of individual therapy is just, it's a lot of therapy.
It is.
And
It
I
is.
would say it kind of doubles that amount of therapy. I haven't really said that before, but I think that's true because, there's no break. So you're staying with,
Totally.
so the life doesn't interfere in between,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
you get to just stay with yourself.
Yes. Yeah, no,
It's really
it
awesome.
is an intensive, like I said, like you guys aren't messing around with, and it's immersive. And then there are all these modalities that are kind of, so for me, I was just finally up against a wall with carrying
Mm,
tremendous grief and shame. And I thought, I'm just not able, I've been working this for a long time and it's not shifting.
right.
It just, and then kind of this immersive experience with the different modalities um, was for me, it was tectonic. Things just shifted and released and yeah.
Yeah, I love hearing that. It's kind of cool because Marilyn Murray, I mentioned earlier, she would see two clients a week for 20 hours each.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it was, and my dad, when I got out here, he started referring to her for that. And so then we started referring to her for that. And then she paid attention, how we would work as a team because my dad's is good about, creating a team environment, um, not doing everything himself. And so she goes, well, let me bring some clients over and do some of that with you. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
that mixture, of Ralph and Marilyn and Marcus, ended up being this, really magic potion, to come up with something that It's reflective of people that have deep trauma, have done some really deep work, or workaholics, addicts. I mean, it's just people that really wanted to see something done differently,
Mhm.
um, to really serve people that just had too much going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my
So
cohort, I'm thinking the reason I was asking about couples as well is because I remember in my cohort, there were two, three people in the cohort, which is also a really great aspect of the program. There's the individual, there's the cohort aspect of it, but several people in the cohort, their marriages were in the meat grinder. I mean, they're really bad stuff. And they were there
yeah,
for themselves to kind of um, just address that, but within the context of themselves. And then there
yeah,
were modalities that I'd never experienced before, like psychodrama, which was just, again, just tectonic. It shifted stuff for me.
yeah. We have a
Um,
new one now called ETT,
ah,
emotional transformation therapy. It's kind of cool.
well,
Um,
if you guys are doing it, I would imagine it's kind of cool. So if someone wanted to find out more about the intensive, what would be the best way to do that?
I just look it up online. So it's PCS intensive or psychological counseling services intensive. So
Okay.
it should pop up. If it
Okay.
doesn't, then we're doing a poor job of putting ourselves out there. Uh,
All right, last question, because I've kept you over. Last question.
all
And
right.
this is the question that I ask of all interviewees for the Making Magnificence project. What does magnificence mean to you in your own life?
Yeah. I intentionally didn't think it through, because I wanted to see what came up. I saw that question. So let me get defensive by crossing my arms. Um, it, it
Your
stinks.
long arms, by the way.
It
It's
stinks to be a therapist.
terrible.
Um, my own magnificence. One, that's really uncomfortable to be asked. So that is the first go-to for me. It's like, I don't know. So then, because then that's kind of tooting your own horn. So I got all this energy, that's coming from my own shame and insecurities that feed part of the answer. So what I believe, and what I tell people about as I'm thinking about this right now, is my persistence.
Mm,
I've just
mm,
been persistent,
mm,
and I've stayed hopeful. Um,
mm.
yeah, so that matters.
That's a beautiful answer.
So it's just a really simple thing that may not seem magnificent, and it
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Just to persist. Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's a
yeah,
thank you. It's a
yeah.
beautiful answer. Um, My guest today has been Dr. Marcus Earle, Clinical Director at Psychological Counseling Services, otherwise known as PCS, in
Yes.
Phoenix, Arizona. Marcus, thank you for this conversation.
This has been fun.
It
So
has.
thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it.